Today, we will hear the story of a young man from Vietnam whose unusual actions have not only gained attention in his country, but have recently gone viral across the entire internet. One day, he made a sudden decision to leave behind all aspects of civilization. No city, no electricity, no markets. His life would be surrounded only by nature, a vast body of water, and the skills of his own two hands. His goal was simple yet extraordinary: to build a completely self-sufficient floating island in the middle of the water. Though it may sound unbelievable, this dream led him deep into a dense rainforest in Vietnam, to a secluded lake hidden within. Surrounded by jungle, eerie silence, and unknown dangers, this is where the greatest test of his life began. But one thing became very clear: he wasn't just building a house, he was shaping his own future with his own hands. Even in today's world, the reality is quite similar. The people who learn new skills and think differently are the ones best prepared for the future. And if you also want to learn new skills and secure your future, then during this Ramadan, I will share with some of you the strategies and complete AI integration process I've learned from growing Maya Jal from 0 to 11 million subscribers over the past 9 years. Check the description and the first comment for details. Now, let's return to the edge of that quiet lake, where his incredible journey began. His first task was to create a floating foundation. While exploring, he discovered that bamboo was the most suitable material: strong, lightweight, and naturally buoyant. So he began cutting bamboo and tying them together to form a large raft. But where would he find rope? Once again, he turned to nature. By stripping strong fibers from bamboo, he created durable ropes and used them to tightly bind the bamboo together. Slowly, his floating base began to shape. Next, he started building a wooden structure on top of the raft, but he had no metal nails. Instead, he used an ancient construction technique, carving holes into wood and fitting other wooden pieces into them to form strong joints. Surprisingly, even without nails, a solid wooden frame stood firm. Then came the roof. He split bamboo into thin tile-like strips and layered them in a way that allowed rainwater to easily run off. Within a few days, a small yet sturdy house emerged in the middle of the lake. But a house alone wasn't enough for survival. He needed food. At first, he caught small fish and shellfish by hand. The original location where he started was rocky and steep, making work difficult, so he moved to another area with his dog, one that had a flat, sandy shore. On his raft, he began creating a garden. He brought fertile soil and decayed leaves from the jungle to make small planting beds. There, he planted chili, vegetables, and even a banana tree. Gradually, a small green world began to grow on top of his floating home. But he didn't stop there. In the middle of the raft, he built a small pond to raise fish. He also created a special trap, and one day it caught a large catfish. Since staying in one place wasn't practical, he built a small pedal-powered boat. With this, he could move quickly across the lake, collect more bamboo and wood, and explore new areas. Then he came up with an even bigger idea: growing rice on water. Using bamboo, he built a large structure. With banana leaves, he created layers to hold water. Then he filled it with soil, decayed leaves, and wood ash to make fertile land, where he planted rice seeds. Over time, his floating world kept expanding. One day, while walking through the forest, he noticed a clear path, likely used by animals. So he set a trap there. After some time, he caught 2 wild chickens. But instead of just food, he saw them as an investment for the future. He brought them back and built a small coop on the raft. To help his garden thrive, he needed bees. So he went into the forest and found a wild beehive. Carefully, he captured the queen bee and placed it into a new box. Soon the entire hive followed. Now his garden was buzzing with bees, and he gained another valuable food source: honey. Finally came harvest time. He cut the rice he had grown, dried it, and processed it into edible grains. After so long, eating rice he had grown himself was one of the happiest moments of his life. Gradually, his floating island turned into a small village. It had a fish farm, vegetable garden, rice field, chicken coop, and beehive. Just a year ago, he had arrived here completely alone. But now before him stood a dream he had built with his own hands. In the end, he realized a profound truth: no one can conquer the world alone. But by living in harmony with nature, it is possible to create a truly independent life.
And that small floating island in the middle of the lake stands as proof that if a person truly wants, they can build an entire new world with their own hands.
After living for months in harmony with his floating island, the young man began to realize that survival was no longer his only goal. He had already proven that a human could build life from nothing. Now, a new thought started growing inside him. What more could this place become? At first, everything seemed perfect. His island had food, shelter, animals, and even a small ecosystem of its own. But nature, as he soon learned, is never static. It always changes. One morning, he noticed the water level of the lake had slightly dropped. Parts of the bamboo foundation were now exposed, and some of the wooden joints had started to weaken. The island that once felt unbreakable now showed signs of aging. Instead of panic, he felt curiosity. This is not failure, he told himself. This is evolution. He began studying the lake more carefully. He observed wind patterns, water flow, rainfall cycles, and even how fish moved around his floating structures. Slowly, he started thinking not like a builder anymore, but like an engineer of nature. So he expanded his island. He reinforced the old bamboo base with thicker logs tied in layered grits. He added flexible joints so the structure could move with waves instead of resisting them. He even designed small water channels through the island so that excess rainwater would naturally drain away instead of collecting and weakening the platform. But his biggest challenge came unexpectedly. During a stormy night, strong winds hit the lake. Waves rose higher than he had ever seen. The floating island shook violently. Trees bent, the chicken coop collapsed partially, and one section of the garden was washed away. For the first time since he began his journey, fear entered his mind. He ran across the moving platform, securing ropes, tying loose bamboo, and saving what he could. His dog stayed close to him, barking through the storm, as if warning him of each incoming wave. The night felt endless, but somehow the island survived. When morning came, everything was quiet again. Mist floated over the water, and broken pieces of bamboo drifted away like memories of the storm. He stood there silently, soaked, exhausted, but still standing. That moment changed everything for him. He understood something important. Nature was not something to conquer or fully control. It was something to adapt with. From that day onward, he redesigned everything, not for perfection, but for resilience. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. While repairing a damaged section of the island, he noticed small plants growing directly on the bamboo itself. Seeds carried by wind and birds had settled into the cracks and begun to grow naturally. It was no longer just his garden. The island itself was becoming alive. This realization inspired him to experiment further. He started intentionally planting moss, vines, and floating vegetation along the edges of the structure. Over time, the boundaries between constructed and natural began to disappear. Fish returned in larger numbers, attracted by the shade and plant life. Birds started nesting on the taller bamboo poles. Even insects formed a balanced ecosystem around the floating land. What began as a survival project was turning into something much bigger, a living habitat created by human hands, but guided by nature itself. Months later, a small wooden boat appeared on the far side of the lake. At first, he thought it was a hallucination. He had been alone for so long that the idea of another human presence felt unreal. But it was real. A fisherman had discovered him. The man who arrived was shocked. He had heard rumors about a floating village made by one man, but never believed it. When he stepped onto the island, he stood silently for a long time. Then he said only one sentence. "You didn't just build a house, you built a world." That moment marked a shift. For the first time, the young man realized his creation was no longer private. It had become something that could inspire others. Over the following weeks, more visitors came. Scientists, travelers, and curious locals. Some came to study, some came to learn. Some simply came to witness what human determination looked like when combined with nature. But despite all attention, he didn't leave, because by now, the island was not just a project, it was his life. And as he stood at the edge of the floating land, watching the sunset reflect across the water, he understood one final truth. He never truly escaped civilization. He simply built a new one, quiet, floating, and alive, between nature and human imagination. After a few months passed, the island was no longer just a project or an experiment. It had slowly turned into something like a small research hub. Yet the life of the young man inside it remained simple, quiet, and deeply connected to nature. People came, visited, got amazed, took photos, and left. But he stayed. However, one day something new happened. After the rainy season began, the water level of the lake started rising unusually. The wind also became stronger than before. What was once the island's greatest strength, the calm water, was now slowly becoming a source of uncertainty. One night, a powerful storm suddenly arrived. This storm was more violent than anything he had faced before. The waves rose so high it felt like the entire lake had come alive. The bamboo structure shook, ropes snapped, and parts of the garden were washed away. But this time he did not panic, only deep alertness remained. He knew that this time it was not just about saving the island, but saving the entire dream. He worked all night. He quickly secured broken sections, opened parts of the structure to reduce water pressure, and double-tied the most important areas. His dog stayed beside him, constantly moving around, watching carefully as if detecting danger. By morning, the storm slowly began to fade. But damage had been done. A large part of the island had broken away. Much of the garden was destroyed. One side of the chicken coop had collapsed. The water was muddy and still. He stood silently. In that moment, he did not break down, but there was a strange, calm exhaustion in his eyes. Then he slowly knelt down and looked at the water. For the first time, he truly understood. His created world could also break. It had limits. But from that realization, something new was born inside him. He told himself, if I built it once, I can build it again. This time, better. That was his real transformation. Instead of repairing the old structure, he began redesigning everything. This time, he focused not just on strength, but on coexistence with nature. He started building floating platforms that would not resist storms, but move with the waves. Slowly, his island became more stable, more alive than before. A few months later, the same fisherman returned. This time, he was not alone. He brought others with him. They looked at the island in complete amazement. It had grown larger, greener, and more organized than before. The fisherman said, "This is no longer just yours. This is a lesson." The young man said nothing. He only smiled while looking at the water. Because he knew the biggest change had not happened outside. It had happened inside him. Once, he only wanted to build an island. Now he understood that he had actually built something far greater. A living story of patience, failure, learning, and rebuilding. The sun slowly began to set, spreading golden light across the water. He stood on top of his floating world, not just a construction anymore.